Good afternoon to everybody, to the ones connected. I see some familiar names over there: Damon, Dina, Babu, Engage Me Consulting. Maybe as we get started, tell us who you are and where you're connecting from. I don't know if the chat function is open. Maybe our tech team can help us with that. Yeah, it seems to be open. Our team is putting there, hello everyone. I can see Milos. I wonder if this is Milos, a good friend of mine, or if this is a new Milos that I've never met. Hi Dina, how are you? Nice to meet you. And yeah, never met. Okay, Milos, good to meet you. I have a very good friend of mine called Milos. He's from Montenegro. So good to know you. All right. I think we're getting close. What's the time? 2:58. We still have 2 more minutes. We'll give it another two minutes to let everybody come in. And we'll get started. Damon, hi guys. I'm a Zeeshan customer here in Dubai. Damon, nice to meet you. Good to know that you are part of the family, and we're here to support you. And especially these type of webinars are done exactly with this purpose, you know, of advising and giving information to our clients and to non-clients of ours on issues related to compliance and tax-related matters. There's been quite a few changes in the last year or so. And we have with us Zeeshan and Mohamed, who are experts on this topic and that are able to facilitate and provide any information. So feel free to send us your questions and any queries that you may have. We're happy to raise them and address them during today. 2:59. We'll give it another minute or so. Maybe before we start, Zeeshan, give us a bit of a background on your experience, who you are, maybe Mohamed as well. What's your background so people can understand a little bit about who you guys are?
So I am an ACCA and a CMA as well. I've been working in this field for 3+ years with Creatives on Tax and Accounting. I've been leading the team at Creatives on Tax and Accounting, and we're looking at all things related to compliance, to VAT, to AML since it came into place, and we're trying to keep ourselves ahead of the game so that we could help all our clients. And before that, I was also working in these fields where we would look into the taxation, and from my previous experience in Pakistan as well, I had worked with some audit firms to look into these areas to develop more on this. But this in UAE, because it all came, it's very recent. It's really a learning curve for all of us. But yeah, so that's kind of where I came from. I've been with Careers in Tax and Accounting since the past 2 years, and helping clients where I can.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that, Zeeshan. Mohamed, a brief introduction about you and your experience.
Thank you, Lorenzo. I'm the Senior Tax and Accounting Advisor with Creative Zone Tax and Accounting. I'm also accredited tax agent from the Federal Tax Authority. I have almost been with Creative Zone Tax and Accounting for 3 years. And previously I used to work with the Federal Tax Authority. So I have experience with the tax regulations in the UAE, and also my background coming from an accounting background.
Excellent, excellent. Very good. Well, it's 3:01. I see about 55 people connected. So I think we can slowly get started. And again, we welcome your questions, your queries. So let me get officially started. Again, welcome to this Creative Zone webinar. We're doing this in collaboration with our sister entity, Creative Zone Tax and Accounting, which is our arm that supports all our clients and outside clients on issues related to tax, accounting, and compliance matters in the UAE, especially for those that have recently set up companies or that have running businesses in the UAE. Now, 2020 and 2021 has seen a set of new measures and compliance measures that were introduced during the last year or so that are meant for making the UAE more compliant with international standards, with the idea of fighting anti-money laundering or fighting money laundering and financial crimes. So maybe to get started, Zeeshan, could you give a brief idea of what were the main measures that were introduced and how has this affected, you know, SMEs and people that are running businesses? What kind of reporting is it that they need to be aware of and that we can help them with?
Sure, Lorenzo. So I'll start off with AML because it's one of the major topics that's being highlighted right now, especially in the past 2-3 months. It's been a very big topic in the whole SME market, especially. So just to introduce what money laundering is. Money laundering is basically someone aiming to conceal or change the source of illegally obtained funds. So whether they do it through layering, they try to hide the original source, which is an illegal source of generating money. So they try to hide that source and make it appear as if that the money that they're using or pumping into the economy is legitimate. So that is one of the reasons why the authorities, along with the help of the global authorities, have put into place these procedures, these policies, and these regulations so that it does not affect the economy and it allows the least amount of people or no amount of people who getting into UAE, for example, UAE being one of the most safest places to work. The risk behind money laundering and terrorism financing leads to economic recession, increase in crime and corruption, threat to the economic stability, and weakening the whole financial institutions that we have in place. And now, as you know, that UAE is trying to be one of the best countries to live in, with Dubai's aim to be, one of the best cities, the happiest cities to live in by 2030. So these all regulations, along with the ESR and other regulations, are really being highlighted, and the authorities are taking a much progressive approach regarding this, and trying to implement this and as soon as possible with the support of the global bodies as well. And that's why this AML is very, very highly highlighted in the market right now. And during this time, we also saw that a lot of people were inquiring about what this is, and that's really key. What the authorities are trying to do is raise awareness about this. They're holding webinars to make sure that everyone knows what this is and why this is important. So one thing that I want to highlight here is who this is important for. First of all, it's not going to be relevant to everyone to be aware, but take initiatives, take the policies in place, take the regulations, and implement them within their companies. It's some sectors that are being targeted by the authorities that need to have these policies in place. Those basically are called the designated non-financial business and professionals, and they include real estate agencies or brokers, dealers in precious metals and gems, then accountants and auditors, legal firms, also the corporate service providers. So these are the main sectors that are being targeted by the authorities to have these policies in place, because these are basically the people who can look into where these people are coming from. So for example, a corporate service provider would be setting up businesses for companies. So they need to make sure that these people who are setting up businesses are legitimate people or not involved in any illegitimate businesses behind the works, behind all the works. Similarly, accountants and auditors as well, they get to keep the books, they get to see the books, what's happening, what's not happening. So they get to keep an observative eye towards all of this.
And one thing that I wanted just to bring up here is I was actually with a client yesterday, and he's a gentleman from South Africa. He was telling me now he was moving his sort of operations here to Dubai because his company had been previously operating from Mauritius. and he was telling me now how lately now Mauritius is not regarded as such a safe haven or a positive jurisdiction in terms of international standards. And this is something that I think the main reason why the UAE has been introducing a lot of these measures and is mainly to fight that, right? Is to position Dubai as a clear place so that when people are moving money or sending international transfers, it doesn't appear on the gray list like it's been happening to other places, correct?
Absolutely. So in 2019, UAE was blacklisted, and that's why all these regulations came into place and are now be very aggressively implemented throughout the country, so that we never get on that list or get even close to that. We were removed from the list as soon as UAE implemented these regulations, and that got us removed from these gray lists, these black lists, and now we're in the safe zone where all of these are in place, and now continue to do the implementation, make sure the transparency is there from the global bodies as well.
All right. Well, I already see a good question from Babu. Maybe I will give the mic to Mohamed a little bit to start giving some ideas of some of the main policies that were introduced. Maybe in the meantime, have a read of what Babu is suggesting. I know of a few of our clients or people that are in similar situations that have been given penalties. We'll discuss this point, Babu, later on during the conversation. Mohamed, quickly, your 2 cents on the why of all these policies, and maybe just to start going forward, what are the main policies? We have AML, ESR, UBO. What are the key things that were introduced?
Okay, regarding the AML, it's very important for every business to do assessment to check whether they conduct any of the activities of the AML or not. So for this, the AML, you need to look at the activities mentioned on your trade license, whether you conduct it or not. We have came across many cases, a client who is not conducting the actual activity that is mentioned in the trade license, but actually he's required to register because the AML should be registered before even conducting the activity. This is a measure for safety before you do the business itself. So any business who have the activities of the AML, they need to register whether they conduct it and generate revenue from it or not.
Very good. Zeeshan, can we say anything else to Babu on his regard with what Mohamed is saying? Is absolutely right. The company is listed as having a real estate activity, and that needs to be reported and registered accordingly, regardless that the company is having any business activity, right?
Yeah, just to add to that, because you see, what happens is before you engage with a client, you need to assess whether that client is a legitimate. So your first customer that walks in the door could have that potential, of being linked with an illegal organization or being linked with any sanctioned people. So you need to have all these policies in place so that you can assess them, assess the risk that customer might bring with them, and then screen them according to the sanctions that have been listed with the authorities, and then be able to report if needed. So that's why whether you have conducted an activity yet or not, you're still required to, if you fall under the law, if you are a real estate company, then you still need to be compliant with these regulations before even you conduct the first business that you do. He's also mentioned that he doesn't have a bank account. Well, bank account can open further during the time, but now what we've seen is the MOE has allowed people who have just set up their companies after 1st May, they've allowed some grace period to, register on the GoML and then may have time to implement these policies.
Excellent. So I see Babu is also suggesting that he has recently removed the activity from the trade license. Babu, maybe at this point, Zeeshan and Mohamed, I could ask you to write your email addresses on the chat section so that people looking at this webinar can reach out to you and ask you further questions on a personal level. But let's take one step back and let's explain. April 30th was the deadline for submitting all GoML registrations under these 5 key activities. Let's maybe go back to that, Zeeshan. Explain what are the main 5 activities, what was the deadline, and what has happened in terms of those penalties that were given to people that haven't submitted in time, and what can be done for those that want to try to do something about those penalties.
Sure. So the original deadline for these companies was 30th March. So anyone who was a real estate agent or broker dealing in precious metals and stones, then accountants and auditors, legal firms, then corporate service providers. These are the 5 main sectors which basically are targeted towards this. So they had until 30th March initially, which was then extended to 30th April. So they had this much time to get the registrations done with GoML. That's the first point. That's kind of a visible point that can be, seen by the authorities that these people have registered. Then they at the same point, simultaneously, they're also required to have the policies in place, the email policies, to do a KYC, to do a customer due diligence. All of these policies, they also need to be in place. So for now, because GoML was the most visible kind of thing that people could see, MOE could see that, okay, these people have registered or not. So from whatever is listed on your license, if you do fall under that activity, they would check, and then if you're registered, that's fine. If not, they would have implemented a penalty. So we've seen, this is the first time that we've seen these penalties regarding AML kick in, where towards the end of July, a 50,000 penalty was being applied by the MOE on businesses falling under these sectors. So, and they were issued notices saying that you have the right to appeal by replying to those emails. So that was the initial stance that the MOE allowed people to, when they issued this penalty, they allowed people to appeal against that. So people started to appeal, and they had this time frame to appeal in. They had about, the regulations say that you have about 15 days to send in an appeal when you're given a penalty. And a lot of people did do that. Now, after that, after you do an appeal, there is a grievance request form that needs to be filled out, along with supporting documents detailing what your justifiable grounds is on not registering on the GoML. So that is how the appeal worked. And right now, we've not heard about any cases where there have been any rejections from MOE or acceptance of the appeals. So right now, it's still pending, but we do think that this would be settled off during September, because throughout August, people have been submitting appeals, and they have been told that they would have around 30 days until which they can expect a response if it's a positive one. But if they do not get a response, then they should assume that it's going to be rejected.
Have you been helping some of our clients go through this appeal process?
Yes, we've helped a lot of clients in providing these emails and supporting them throughout their appeal process, and trying to help whatever justifiable grounds that we could see for any of those. Because most businesses, what happened with them was they just had an activity listed on their trade license, and they ended up removing those, and then were able to send in appeals and do all of that from that point of view. They never used that activity, and so weren't aware about anything in that front. But there were also some cases where the clients had also registered, so and they were kind of wrongfully sent a notice that you've been penalized. So we had those cases as well. So we've helped clients wherever they had reached us in submitting an appeal, and we're still trying to see how MOE responds to that.
Very good. Maybe Mohamed, you could help with answering this. It says, I have tried to register on AML, but rejected, though I am doing real estate consulting. Can you advise? So does real estate consulting fall fall under one of the activities that need to be registered?
Yes, the real estate is falling under the activities of the GoML, but when you receive a rejection from the Ministry of Finance, they would mention for you the reason, whether they mentioned that you are not eligible or what was the reason. So I would recommend you, if you can email me, I have sent my email in the chat, so we can look into your case and we would be more than happy to assess your case and help you.
Very good. Well, Deborah is saying, I got a reply saying I do not qualify for registration. So maybe Deborah, get in touch with Mohamed, and we will see whether you would qualify for that or not. I mean, we can see that maybe the Ministry of Economy said no, but it's good to have a look at this. Mohamed, what else can we say on GoML before we move on to some of the other topics? What has been your experience on dealing with the reporting of this for companies in the UAE?
I would recommend every business to have the assessment done. Whether you are setting up a new license, you need to look when you choose your activities, if you will be under the law of the ML or not. So I would recommend you to register for GoML before doing any business, before even exceeding the grace period, because the authorities are very strict with the GoML and the penalties are starting from 50K. So it's not a good start for any business to start with this hefty penalty. And it's better to assess the situation from the beginning and start your business on the right pace.
Excellent. Zeeshan, Dina has a very good question. She says, I sell made to order fine jewelry through an e-commerce company, but my license activity is e-commerce. So she's selling fine jewelry through her e-commerce company. Does she still need to file for GoML or ESR in this point as well?
Yes, I would recommend her to do the GoML registration, because she's involved in selling this and selling precious metals and gems, basically. So one part of that would be a brief answer to that is yes, she should.
Excellent. I'm going through some of the other questions. Maybe we can move to, sorry, you had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on the GoML, on the AML front. We've also seen in August that there was a risk assessment form that was sent out to these companies where MOE has asked a lot of questions, about 70+ questions on the details about the companies, which ask them about their customers, their products and services, and also about what policies they've implemented, and further what policies they've implemented, what they've not done, have they appointed a compliance officer, and do they do risk assessment, anything on that front. So that was very important. They had a deadline of 22 weeks to submit this information to the authorities.
Yeah, Dominic is saying, what if the AML questionnaire was not submitted within the deadline of the 29th of August 2021? Are there any penalties, or can we submit the questionnaire now?
Well, if you've not done so, then I would highly recommend to get it done as soon as possible. But there is a possibility that the penalty might be applicable, because this is information that the authorities are asking you, and they have a deadline, right? So the regulations say that if you do not provide the information requested within the time frame, there are penalties in place. And this could be one of those things that, gets a penalty on you. So I would recommend you to have the questionnaire submitted as soon as you can.
Good stuff. All right, let's move on to UBO. UBO was also introduced earlier last year, and it needs all companies to have to report the ultimate beneficial ownership of all existing companies, especially all the new companies that are being registered, have to report the ultimate beneficial ownership. Can you tell us a little bit more of what has happened in this front as well?
Sure, absolutely. So UBO, basically, the ultimate beneficiary owner is a regulation that is very closely associated with AML, where you have to identify that ultimate beneficiary owner, especially if there are multiple layers of companies involved in setting up a company. So you have to know who's the actual beneficiary of that company. So there could be a company A which owns a company B, which owns a company C, and the owner of the company A is actually the beneficiary owner, right? So you have to identify even for company C that this person is the actual beneficiary owner, and you have to disclose that information to the authorities as well. And as part of these regulations, you also need to maintain registers on your own as well. So at your premises, you need to maintain a register for your shareholders, and a separate register for your ultimate beneficiary owners, and a separate one for if you have any nominee directors. And these need to be properly maintained. Whenever there are changes, you need to inform the authorities within 15 days, and also make sure all of these are updated in the registers that you maintain on your premises as well.
For
It
in
becomes
layman
very
terms, in layman terms, what does it
so,
mean to maintain registries for people that might not understand what that
so
implies?
registers mean it's a basic information. It's a set of information that the regulations say that you have to and you have to maintain the name, the address, the partnership status, the how many shares you own, whatever their connection to the company is, how they're connected to the company, since when they're connected to the company, and all those contact details, passport information, and all these details regarding someone specific, right? So these need to be maintained, maybe in an Excel form, whatever form that you choose, but it needs to be maintained. And these details are mentioned in the laws as well, so whatever you need to maintain.
So what was the deadline for all companies to submit their UBO, and this was supposed to be done directly with the authority, with the authority holding your license? And as in the case of our clients, we were supporting our clients in submitting these UBO registrations, correct?
Yes. So initially the deadline was in 2020 because that's when the law came in. This is not a law where you have to do this on a very regular basis. It's something that you need to do when there's a change. When you set up a new company, you have to do this anyways with the authorities. Now, every authority has something in place which gets the UBO information, which gets the shareholder information before issuing the license. Then after, whenever there's a change in any of these documentations, then you have to inform the authorities within a certain time frame. So it's accordingly whenever there are changes. But then it would be an annual kind of thing, because on an annual basis there might be changes. There might be updates in the trade license. For example, the trade license gets renewed, so there'll be an automatic UBO update. You might add a shareholder, you might remove a shareholder, you might change you might get your passport renewed, Emirates ID renewed. So anything that changes, you need to inform that to the authorities and keep a copy of that with yourselves as well.
Yeah, maybe Mohamed, Dominic is asking, what is the procedure to register for the UBO after the deadline? And are there any penalties for non-registration?
So for the UBO, the form to do the registration, it's different from one jurisdiction to the other. Some of the jurisdictions has online form to be filled in and to be submitted. Some of the other jurisdictions, they have an email to send to them. So it depends on the jurisdiction. So I will be more than happy to check your company's trade license and advise you about the exact mean of doing your registration for UBO.
Very good. So Dominic, you can get in touch with Mohamed. Maybe I will ask our tech team to also put out this landing page where would allow people that would like to learn more information about all these different regulations to fill in a form. There is a form. It will go into our CRM system and our advisors will pick this up. You can express there specifically your question, what do you like to learn more about? And this way we will make sure that we keep a track of these topics, and we will for sure get in touch with you and give you more information and hopefully help you through this. We also have Fadi Khoury. He's saying, hello, my name is Fadi. I'm opening a startup. Who is the best entity who can help to guide me through setting up the business? This is what we do as a main business from our side, Fadi. At Creative Zone, we help people set up their companies and obtain a trade license. Maybe also our tech team can write directly to Fadi and give him the landing page for submitting his information for applying for setting up a business. Zeeshan, anything else on UBO before we move on to VAT or ESR perhaps?
Yeah, just to highlight some of the penalties that are in place. We've seen in July that companies got penalized for 15K for just not submitting one form, which has your shareholder details. That was 15K penalty issued to these people. Now, there are further penalties of not maintaining these registers, just not having a register which has the details of your shareholder. That leads up to a 50K penalty. And if you don't record proper information for the shareholder, that leads to a 30K penalty. And then if you still, and they give you some time to make sure that you do update these things. But if you don't do that, still don't do that after their notices, then they also can suspend your licenses from anything from 3 months to 12 months. And then it's easier to submit a form. It's easier to maintain that information from a client's point of view. You would know all the shareholders, all the people that are, it's just maintaining those. So it's a very simple thing, and we can also help you in maintaining that at first, and then you can take it from there.
Excellent. Well, I see an important question from Veni Farouk, who appears to be one of our clients, and he says, I've received an email from Creative Zone that my company may be subject to penalties. I've done the AML assessment. It showed that there is an activity that is subject to registration. Then I removed the activity on the 31st of August, 2021. His question, he wants to know whether he still needs to register on the GoML platform after removing the activity, and how do companies usually receive the penalty notification from the authority. What I can say, Veni, for sure by now you are in touch with one of our business or client relationship managers inside of Creative Zone. You can also seek the advice of Mohamed or Zeeshan, but if you're already connected with one of our client relationship managers, I recommend you that you continue the conversation with one of them. If you have received a penalty, in the case that it seems to be that you have received a penalty, I suggest that you apply for an appealing process and then show evidence that you have now removed the activity from your license as the 31st of August. Zeeshan, would that be the right course of action?
Yeah, that's what I would suggest as well. And just making sure you have the relevant things in place. And if you've not done any activity previously regarding this particular activity, then that would be one of the courses that I would suggest.
And the second part says, how do companies usually receive the penalty notification from the authority? I believe there are emails going directly to clients from the Ministry of Economy, informing them of a penalty given on AML, correct?
Yeah, correct, Lorenzo. So right now the procedure is they MOE themselves send out an email to all the clients who they believe have been non-compliant, and they issue a notice saying that this is your penalty and these are the reasons why this penalty is being applied to you. And then if you have any justifiable grounds to appeal, this is the process that you do an appeal through. Otherwise, please make a payment through this process. They also mention that as well. They provide a link and all of that information.
Samir, you have a similar question. What applies if you have removed the activity after registration? I think we kind of explained that. And again, if you are in touch already with one of our client relationship managers, I suggest that you connect with them again, and you make sure that you are aligned and compliant when it comes to all of these topics. Moving on, maybe we can go into VAT. There's a lot of questions coming through on VAT. Again, this is nothing new to the UAE. This has been introduced now for several years. There's a certain threshold that I believe, Mohamed, is 375,000 dirhams for anybody that wants to be a part of VAT and collect VAT on behalf of the government, has to have that minimum threshold of 375,000 dirhams. And there are quarterly reports that need to be done to the tax authorities. Can you tell us a little bit more, and what else should people know about this topic?
Thank you, Lorenzo. So for the VAT registration, it's a very basic requirement in taxes in the UAE. The first and a very important requirement here to start with the VAT registration. There are two types of VAT registration. The first one is the mandatory registration. This, once you exceed 375,000 of sales plus imports, and then you will need to take in account also the zero rated sales. I have came across many cases that clients are selling to outside the UAE and they think that they don't need to register for VAT. But the actual, and as per the regulations, you need to take into account the amount of sales that you are doing to outside, which is export of goods or services. It's taxable at 0%, which means that should be included within the threshold. So if you have exceeded 375,000 in the last 12 months, then you need to register for VAT within 30 days from exceeding the threshold, because the late registration will attract penalties, which starts from 10K. The other option to register for the VAT is the voluntary registration. This is an optional for any company who would like to be registered, so they would be able to claim back VAT on their expenses. So this, once you exceed 187,500 in the historic test, which is the last 12 months, or expected in the next 30 days. This also can be applied to your expenses. If you have expenses more than 187,500, you can register voluntary. The only benefit of registering voluntary is that you will be able to claim back the VAT on your business expenses.
And guide also the listeners today, which type of clients do need to do bookkeeping, keep their books and keep records of their transactions? When is it necessary to do auditing? Which type of entities, which type of companies?
All businesses in the UAE, as per the tax regulations, are required to maintain the accounting records. Whether they are registered for VAT or not, they are still required to maintain the accounting records. This is the very basic requirement for every business in the UAE, whether in free zone or mainland. It's the same for everyone, that they need to maintain the accounting records. Because if the authority would like to check about your company why you are not registered for VAT, then they are expecting to have proper financial statements, proper accounting records to be able to check your records. And
go ahead.
Regarding the audit, it is required only from a specific jurisdictions that you would require it for the renewal of the trade license. But as per the tax regulations, there is no audit report would be required, other than if it's required by specific authority for the renewal of their license.
Deborah is asking, I basically do real estate consulting and has gotten commissions above 375,000. Do I need to register for VAT?
Yes, if you are doing consultancy to clients inside the UAE, if it's taxable at 5% or taxable at 0%, you need to register for VAT within 30 days of exceeding 375.
What are the penalties of not registering in time?
The penalties for late registration, it starts with 10,000, which is the late registration penalty. However, it depends on how late you are. If you have missed some of the VAT returns, which are quarterly, then it might apply late VAT return penalty of 1,000 and percentage penalties on the late payment of the VAT amounts.
Excellent. Egemen is asking, is Amazon advertisement, storage costs, etc., business expenses as well? Would Amazon advertising and storage expenses could be considered as business expenses?
Good question. Regarding this, if you are making taxable supplies through Amazon and you use this expense in order to be able to make taxable supplies, which are your sales, then yes, it would be okay to claim it back.
Dominic is asking, if a company is just formed and with a projected turnover in the next 12 months less than $100,000, can we get a TRN number from the FTA?
When we talk about the expected is based on contract or purchase order or LBO. So in case you have any documentation as a proof that you will exceed this limit in the next 30 days, then you can apply for the VAT registration based on the expectation. But if it's only a projection or something internal, then the FTA will not accept the application.
So basically, we're saying if you're not sure that you're going to reach the $100,000, it's better to wait until you have documentation that prove that you are able to reach that number. What happens if you register, but you're saying it wouldn't be possible to register, and then you don't cover the 375,000 dirhams?
When we submit the application, we need to submit a proof that you have exceeded the threshold, or the other way is to submit a proof that in next 30 days you are going to exceed the threshold. Otherwise, the FTA will reject the application.
Very good. Judy is asking, we're selling UK properties in the UAE. Do we invoice the developer who is based in the UK with 5% tax or 20% tax? Okay,
regarding the real estate, there is an exception for the place of supply. So the place of supply of the real estate, it will be where is the real estate is located. I would recommend to look into your case in more detail, so I would be able to give you the exact advice.
Excellent. Judy, feel free to reach out to Mohamed. His email is there. Maybe Mohamed, put your email once more there because it's gone up all the way so that viewers can see this. We have 90 people connected. I think there's some good topics being shared here, a lot of crucial information that is quite important for keeping compliant when running a business here in the UAE. Zeeshan, anything else on VAT that we can mention on this section?
Well, it's a ever-evolving topic, Lorenzo. And new things come and go. And it's, for example, now the expo is happening starting next month. So if there are any businesses who are registered, officially partnered with Expo, there is a refund that's available to them as well. Plus, in the last quarter, we also saw that there was reduced penalties being offered by the MOI, the FTA, basically, and now we have a dashboard that's also implemented by the FTA on the VAT portals as well, which highlights clearly what these things are, what the penalties are, and what can be reduced. And we've seen that this has had a very favorable response from everyone. So these things are very frequent. I would highly recommend you guys to get in touch with us if you need any more information regarding any topic that you're doubtful on, so that you can know what you need to do.
Excellent. Yeah, there's so many questions coming through. Abigail is asking, we are providing project management services to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Should we put 0% tax? Mohamed, I guess these are all very specific cases. I really recommend that you guys reach out directly to Mohamed and Zeeshan, or even fill in the form to learn more information about these topics. Again, if our tech team can put out the link so that people can fill in their forms to learn more on these topics. Maybe time to move on to the final topic of today, which is ESR. Again, ESR was introduced, I think, earlier in the year, and it listed 9 activities for those companies that fell under ESR. Tell us a little bit, Zeeshan, what are those 9 activities? Which type of companies had to be doing ESR reporting, and why was this introduced?
So yeah, as you mentioned, Lorenzo, there are 9 activities who fall under ESR. These are banking, shipping, insurance, holding activities. There's also intellectual property, distribution and service centers, And the list is an ongoing. It's listed on the authorities pages as well. But what's more important is that every company is supposed to assess themselves according to these activities every year, because you could be doing this activity one year and not be doing this activity in the next year. So for example, lease and finance is one of the activities listed. So if you in 2019 haven't done any of the activities, in 2020 you could have loaned someone some amount for an interest, and that then makes you liable to be under this regulations, and then you would have to file a notification. So every year you need to reassess yourself and see whether you fall under any of those activity, any of those 9 listed activities. And they can be.
Can you list the activities once more?
It's banking, shipping, intellectual property, holding, lease and finance, headquarter businesses, distribution and services, investments, funds, management businesses. These are the basic 9 activities.
So maybe for the viewers, we have 90 people connected. Let us know if you fell under or you fall under any of these activities, whether you have submitted your ESR reporting, what has been your experience on this, and if there is any question that we can advise on this. Have there been any penalties for lack of reporting on ESR?
Yes, so ESR has been in place from last year, right? So the implementation was done in 2020, where the reporting was also starting to be done towards the late end of the year. And we saw that there's an online portal for ESR. It's much evolved from the previous manual reporting. Now it happens on an online basis, where you fill in the online form for notification and then the reports as well. So if you don't do this, we have seen cases where people have submitted a notification saying that they do conduct an activity and they did not submit a report. And in those cases, they were penalized. So these on the ESR front, it's an automatic kind of thing. If you do not do one of the reported things, you get an automatic penalty, same as VAT, where it's an online portal thing, and it's an automatic based kind of penalty system that goes into place.
And where does this reporting need to be done? Directly with the authority? Could you explain this a bit to the viewers?
Yes. So MOF has a portal on their website. It's easily reachable just if you type into Google MOF economic substance regulations. It will take you directly to the page where there's a portal, and you set up your company details as a new user, and all the guidelines are also there to help you do this. And if you need any help, we can also do this for you. But this portal, what you need to do is know what you do from a business point of view. So if you do conduct a relevant activity and you have earned income from it, then you would need to have a notification done plus a report done. And this will be based on your financial year end. So if, for example, your financial year end is March 21, your notification deadline would be September 21. That's this month. So if you've done a relevant activity until March 21, that's your financial year end. This is your deadline month. You need to go and submit your economic substance notification online. And then you would have another time frame to submit the report as well. In the report, what happens is you need to be presenting information or submitting information which tells the authorities that you have adequate resources in place, adequate fund, the direction and management is being done properly. You have the right employees in place within UAE. All of this, it's called as an economic substance test. So you need to make sure that you pass this economic substance test within that reporting year. So then these deadlines fall into place and you need to report these things accordingly.
And this assessment as well and the reporting is something that you're able to help our clients with, right?
Absolutely. We can help our clients with assessing whether you do conduct any of these activities. And if you do, we would assist in submitting the notifications. And also, if you need to be submitting any reports, we would also be able to help you submit these reports as well.
Rainan is asking, is ESR required for companies who just registered this year, but no activities yet?
So ESR would only happen when your first financial year end is. After that, you would be required to assess whether throughout your first financial year, you've conducted these activities. And then you would have 6 months to notify the authorities through the notification form. And if you do conduct these activities and earn income, then you have 12 months from the first financial year end to submit that report.
Excellent. Mohamed, what's your take on ESR? How is it that you've been helping people? What other details can we share today on this?
So the ESR is based on the conducting activity. So it's not like the AML. So if you have an activity on your trade license, but you don't conduct it, then you wouldn't be required to comply with the ESR. And also when we are looking at the assessment of the ESR, we don't look only at the activity that is mentioned officially on the trade license, but we go into details and look at the actual activity that the company is conducting, the type of their clients and their suppliers. Then you would be able to assess whether you are within the regulations or not. The assessment is very important to be done every year after the end of the financial year. I can see also a question that if I haven't conducted any business using the trade license, do I need to comply? So the answer for this would be no. If you haven't conducted any activities, then you are not under the regulations of the ESR.
Excellent. We're getting a few questions, people asking whether the session is being recorded and whether we will be able to share the link to this video. Indeed, we will be sending everybody the full link again with the full session of today, so you can go through this again. And again, if you have questions on the topic, reach out to Mohamed and Zeeshan or to our entity, Creative Zone Tax and Accounting, and we will be able to facilitate. Ines is saying, great session and initiative. Thank you so much, Ines. Is really about us trying to shed light on these topics. We are aware that this is something that all companies need to convey and to apply when it comes to maintaining their business within the framework of what is being presented by the authorities. So we try to do our best in keeping everybody informed with the latest regulations and to support them in any of these topics. I think we're slowly getting to the end of today. Maybe I will leave it open for a couple more minutes for anybody that has any final questions. But as we go through those questions, maybe Zeeshan, what would be your summary of today? What else can we tell people on why they should be keeping a close eye on these regulations and making sure that they are compliant as they operate their businesses here in the UAE?
Sure, absolutely, Renzo. So we've seen in the UAE, because the authorities are linking this with a global approach where they're becoming more compliant, they need to also assess whether the companies within UAE are compliant as well. So each company needs to have a compliance framework in place now. It isn't like before where anyone could just set up and not care about all these regulations and just do business as it was. Now they're making it sure that compliance is a proper thing that's being done in UAE, and it shouldn't be looked at as inconvenience. It should be looked at more of something that needs to be in place to make sure that the environment that we live in is a safe environment as well. Because avoiding AML situations, avoiding companies who are illegal, who are doing illegal businesses, it helps keep the environment in UAE safe as well. So it's very important for a company as well to make sure you're compliant with all these regulations as well, So you need to keep assessing, be aware of what's in the market. I see a lot of clients raising issues saying that we weren't aware about this, we weren't aware about this. This is where we try to help all our clients. We're having these sessions, we try to post this on our social media, on all these platforms. So we try to raise that awareness about all of these topics, and we're trying to help any client who would need any help regarding ESR, UBO, AML, to make sure you guys are compliant. We know everyone does not have those expertise in place, and that's why CreditZone is trying to help you guys to have that done, have that compliance framework in place to make sure you're okay and you can continue to do whatever you want, and then we can help you with doing the least the boring part or the compliance work, if I could say that. So
I couldn't agree more with your statement, Zeeshan, and I can totally see how business owners, entrepreneurs, SMEs, they just want to do business. They want to they want to grow their businesses, and anything that comes that relates to compliance and regulation and filling in forms. That's why you can count on a company like ours that will hold your hand and take the burden of these things that are a little bit of a headache for people to deal with. So I think it's important that we're here for our clients and for anything that they might need, and we're here to help you take this burden out from you. I think we have to put together some basic package called compliance and regulation that covers everything and keeps all the companies compliant from ESR, UBO, AML, tax, and everything related, so that people can concentrate on what they do best, which is business, and let this headache to other people. Mohamed, your final comments for today.
It's very important for every business to look at the tax regulations. I know and we understand that it's a headache for any business owner to look at tax when every business is looking like tax. They feel scared from the word itself. So you would need an advice, you would need support from a professional. So this will help you to avoid any complications after. As we came across many clients that they were not aware or were not taking care of the tax requirements, then after that the penalties are getting hefty, and it's mostly system penalties. We cannot avoid it. So I would recommend every business from the beginning to start looking at the VAT registration, to be aware about it, to start doing your bookkeeping. Then you will be able to track your revenue when you need to register for VAT, and after that doing all the compliance, coming with the VAT returns, the tax invoices, and also looking at the other compliance like the AML, UBO. It's very, very important for the business to do a very small step at the beginning, so you would avoid the hassle of trying to appeal penalties, which is very complicated. It's not easy to get it done like when you do your initial form or do the initial VAT registration. So my advice would be to look at this. Once you start your business, you need to get a proper advice from a professional to advise you what are the next steps for your business.
Indeed. And as we were saying, the penalties are not low. They're quite hefty. You're talking about 10, 15, 20, 50,000 dirhams in some cases for some of the penalties. This puts out of business any entrepreneur and any new SME coming out there. So definitely it's worth looking how we can protect ourselves from these. So again, well, I think we reached the end of today. I think there were some really good questions out there. We had 90 people connected. Thank you to everybody that took part of this. Thank you, Zeeshan. Thank you, Mohamed, for taking the time to explain and to share your knowledge. Please reach out to Mohamed and Zeeshan if you have any questions. We will share the link with everybody. And from our side at Creative Zone, anybody that needs to set up a new business or any queries that you have with your existing business, please reach out to us and reach out to Zeeshan and Mohamed for any compliance or tax and accounting related matters. Again, thank you so much. It's good to see you all, and we'll see you in the next one.